President Rodrigo Duterte addressed the nation again last night, this time to discuss the protocols for returning overseas Filipino workers and Filipino travelers. The Labor Department wants the government to ease the quarantine procedures. Let's bring in our Trisha Terada. Now, Trisha, good morning. What does the president think of this proposal, and how does the Labor Department want to go about it?
Well, President Rodrigo Duterte is not willing to take a compromise amid appeals of the Labor Department to ease quarantine protocols for returning overseas Filipino workers. Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello has been asking the COVID-19 task force to bring back the previous screening procedure for returning Filipinos. This entails swabbing upon arrival, quarantine for 5 days, and release after a negative result. Experts do not seem to agree since the day of testing is crucial in detecting the virus. They are very much concerned about the possibility of a false negative. But as a compromise, they have alternative options. Infectious disease expert and IATF consultant Dr. Edsel Salvania proposes to shorten the duration of quarantine period from 14 down to 10 days if there are no symptoms. Ideally, this should be done in a quarantine facility. Strict home quarantine is possible, but only if the local government can make sure of daily monitoring and strict compliance at home. But Philippine Genome Center Chief Dr. Cynthia Saloma and President Duterte agree home quarantine is difficult to enforce.
Kung iuwi natin sila sa mga bahay, alam mo naman tayo mga Filipino, exuberant. Ang hirap-hirap talaga mag-chat-chat talaga sa neighbor, mga kapatid, mga kaibigan. So kailangan din po na kahit doon, pauwiin man sila sa bahay nila o LGU man sila, we really need to enforce po yung strict quarantine. Yan lang po talaga yung ating panlaban dito.
Actually, kung yung protocol sa bahay, hindi nasusunod yan. In a scale of 1 to 10, you may have a compliance of only about 4. Hindi talaga nasusunod yan?
In this proposal, testing is optional unless symptomatic. There is another alternative, and let's call that Scenario B. Scenario B entails testing on the 7th day when a returning Filipino tests negative. The person may be released from the quarantine facility. Doctors explain the most infectious period is the first week. This alternative cuts down the number of quarantine days to around 7 to 10 days. Back to you.
Trisha, why exactly is the Labor Department insisting on easing protocols for returning OFWs and travelers?
Well, the Labor Department is concerned of its depleting resources because DOLE shoulders the expenses for OFWs in quarantine facilities. Bello argues there's only a 1.5 to 2.07 positivity rate among returning OFWs. Bello says, aside from the economic aspect, he's also concerned about the social and mental well-being of OFWs. He stresses on the time they lose in quarantine instead of spending it with their families they have missed. Experts acknowledge this, and that's why they're really open to alternatives, or that's why these alternatives came about. But one thing is clear, doctors say it's important to protect the borders.
If you see the genetic tree po ng virus, may isa lang nakalusot, 5. Ang 5 ng mga manganak, nanggaling din naman sila sa ating borders. No? So may mga weakness yung ating borders na gusto po natin pagpabuting pa. Kaya po kailangan talaga yung quarantine measures.
The president takes note of the fact that medical experts are ready for the strictest measures to protect the borders. Back to you.
So, Trisha, after all this discussion and after all these suggestions, what decision did the president arrive at?
No decision yet, Rhea, but the president did say that he sides with the doctors. According to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, the matter will be discussed by IATF in its next meeting. Over to you, Rhea.
Thanks a lot for that, Trisha Terada there reporting. Authorities say 500,000 OFWs have come home since the start of the pandemic. 6,500 are currently staying in 125 hotel quarantine facilities.